Okay. All right.
If you don't mind. Yes, it's okay with you.
Hello. We get power on this goddamn thing now. Fucker.
Oh. AT&T. We're working with Brad, but AT&T. So am I. Have a change. I think I'll better than, okay, there's no dirty pictures in there.
Can you guys hear me? Hello?
It has one of these symptoms
Hello?
because they're so broad,
Yes,
you know?
agreed.
Charlie?
That's why,
Charlie, you there?
know,
Can
I
you say
think,
something?
Yeah,
you know,
1, 2,
I'm
3,
not too
4,
impressed
5.
with their.
Charlie, can you say something, please?
I think they're
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's bullshit.
Mhm.
Man, I gotta get the goddamn.
Now maybe I'll go down for a minute. I can just go down.
Yeah, go ahead. Just do it.
You guys hear me at all?
Do it. Do it.
Yes.
Facts are doing better than I thought. Now I have to figure out what the hell to do with that.
Damn it, can't get anywhere. Got a new set of speakers. I'm trying them out. That's all. Charlie, can you say something, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
All right. Fine, we got it. God damn it. Can't seem to. Fuck. Just give me a minute, please.
Just take some. He's gonna do a sample replacement. Give him a sample. See enough sample. They were like. Figure.
Yeah, can you hear me? Just say something again.
And they're like
1, 2,
Not pretty
3,
far.
4, 5, 6,
Like in their
7, 8, 9, 10.
Okay, I can hear through the. Okay, just give me a second. I'm trying to get these things set up.
Executive Tower, welcome back. Continuing down to runway
I'm not
16,
getting anywhere. God damn it.
and 05016, gust 19er. We're canceling IFR prior to circling east or west, your discretion.
Okay, well, we got something coming in, but it's not loud. God damn it.
Check your Q1, Roger, make way.
God damn it. God damn it. It's like I gotta set up the other set. God damn it. Give me a second. We'll be ready in a minute. God damn it.
Be patient. We're okay.
All right. Yeah, I'm trying to get the speaker up here, and it's just, I got a new set, and it doesn't seem like it's working properly. Taken back to fucking Best Buy. Yeah, it's a god damn it. Just a minute. This is ridiculous.
What do you expect from Best Buy?
Well, please don't give me any. Gonna get these done here soon enough.
It's a reference book.
Just give me a minute, please.
Yesterday was my setting.
I'm gonna try this again. Bear with me for a minute, please. There, here.
Insurance companies.
Can you hear me? Can you say something? Charlie, again, let's test.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Okay, well, I can hear you, but it's still not. God. Okay, well, we'll go with these. Just have to shift the shit around again tonight. All right, give me a minute. We'll get started here. We'll get started real soon here.
Not the old car, I got rid of that.
Yeah, you had a mistake. I think you're
I had a,
saying, so I'm thinking of like,
no, I had a little thing.
Yeah.
mistake. did you?
Sir. I just am having some trouble again. This is ridiculous. Okay, hang on a minute. We're gonna get started now. All right. Just give me a minute and I'll get started here. Okay, now.
I don't like.
I mean,
2022. It's a new car, so.
React to the tip or something.
Both of us there.
The police, I wasn't satisfied with their.
All right.
Which one?
So just to let you know, we can hear you fine and we can hear each other fine.
No, I know that. It's just the speakers coming out of the computer. I haven't been able to figure out how to get this volume out. It works on my desktop,
Yes, you did.
but I'll have to figure that out next week again. Damn it. Okay, now let me get the recording started and go. Shit. Think about it. All right.
Lives in Rogers Park, so. I give a ride to Rogers twice.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the College of Complexes. My name is Tim. I'm glad you're all here tonight. Tonight, our guest is going to be Justin, who's going to be talking about libertarian Saul Alinsky and his views. The College of Complexes consists of the following format. One, there'll be a brief announcements period. Second, our speaker will speak up to an hour. Then we'll have our question and answer period. And after our question and answer period, we will then go into our infamous rebuttal period. With that, Charlie, let's get your announcements ready and we'll be ready to go.
All right, welcome everyone to meeting number 3,816 of the College of Complexes, the playground for people who think. Now, although I am not a capitalist, I will give an advertisement for our upcoming programs. Next Saturday on May the 10th, political analyst Eric Mao will be trying to show us how we are now living in a multipolar world. A multipolar world. Following that, on May the 17th, they haven't been here in a while, but the American Monetary Institute will be here to bring us up to date on the economic policies of the United States and the global community. So AMI on the 17th. Transitioning to May 24th, we'll be looking at the topic of Tom Tresser, activist in the Chicago community, on a variety of topics. We'll talk about how he had previously and is currently involved in the culture war, he calls it. There's a culture war in the United States that is in progress. That's on May the 24th. On May the 31st, I see she's there tonight. Jan Bodart, very active with Nuclear Energy Information Service. We'll be talking about the feasibility of small modular nuclear reactors. Examining the topic in depth. She's got some research on this. That leaves learning into June. And we have 4 dates open in June, June 7, 14, 21, and 28. I was thinking on June the 7th, I'm doing an assessment of the Trump administration. It'll be about 100 days, depending on how you figure it. So we'll come up with a program. Any ideas about that are welcome. Okay, Tim, that's all for tonight. Take it away.
Yeah, if anybody else has any announcements, let's get them up now. Anybody has any other announcements? Let's get them up now. And let's if you want to come on up and give them up here at the podium, will be much welcome. Again, we're entertaining announcements.
Let's go, man.
On the last Thursday of this month, I'm pretty sure it's the 29th. Could you check that, Tim? The last Thursday of the month? I'm pretty sure it's the 29th. Yeah, it is. Okay. We're on Night with the Experts. We're going to hear from Joe Rahm. Night with the Experts is at 7 p.m. and you can, and it's on Zoom only. If you want an invitation, you send an email to neis@neis.org. And Joe wrote The Hype About Hydrogen, and he wrote Climate Change, What Everyone Needs to Know, which is now, I think, in its 7th edition. It might be a textbook. Anyway, it looks like this, and it's a picture of cars underwater. But the name of the book is Climate Change, What Everyone Needs to Know. So that's going to take place at NEIS on Zoom at 7 o'clock, the last Thursday of the month, the 29th of May. Thank you.
Okay. Any other announcements? Okay.
Did you know when we're coming back to diving after an injury, you can't
Okay,
just jump back in the water and
with
go
that, we're going to ask that
as you used to
we're going to ask now that
work your
if
way
you're ready, sir,
through a couple of
let's go up and get your announcements upwards.
really
Let's
basic lines that that's
any more announcements?
really well, which is a
All right, we're
Would
going
you
to let
put
you
everybody
get up there and start.
really
Any announcements from the?
back and building
Would
back
you put everybody on?
We got some interference in the background here, so
weeks, but I just
hang
won't
on
be
a minute here.
time. So my next
All right. Okay, Justin, take it away while I switch cameras again and so hang on a minute here.
Hang on.
Here. Okay, we're ready.
All right.
3. God damn it.
So to be giving the special May Day presentation here at the college complexes. And today we're going to discuss what can libertarians learn from Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky. So who here has read Rules for Radicals?
Nobody.
George and Dr. Littenberg. All right, cool. So who was Saul Alinsky? Saul Alinsky was a community organizer, labor organizer, community leader, activist. He was born in 1909 in Chicago, and according to his biography in Rules for Radicals, he was, quote, educated first in the streets of that city and then in its university, unquote. So he went to the University of Chicago. He graduated from a bachelor's degree in sociology, but he did not complete his postgraduate studies in criminology. And in in a March 1972 Playboy interview, which if you've seen Dinesh D'Souza's movie Hillary's America, The Secret History of the Democratic Party, which is a very horrible movie, they reenact this Playboy interview and reenact a young Alinsky doing these things that I'm about to describe. So in this interview, he talks about organizing, right, as a kid, and he's hungry. How can he get food? He's a smart guy. He's going to figure out a way. So what he does is he goes to a cafeteria where in the day they would give you meal tickets. I'm not sure how the system works. So I don't know all the nuances of how he could get away with this. But what he did basically was he had a meal ticket that was worth a nickel, and he got coffee with it. Well, he told the waitress or the counter lady that, oh, I forgot my meal ticket. She's like, well, you just had coffee. Go ahead and just give me, pay for it with cash, which he did. Or I guess with coins in this case. And so he went to another cafeteria in the same chain where the tickets could be redeemed. And he got himself a big meal. Like, he said that he could have eaten the entire cafeteria with $1.25, which was the value of the meal ticket he had, or he pretended to have. So he ate this big meal, and then he goes to redeem it with just a nickel. So he was able to get a big meal for the price of a coffee, and he told his fellow students at University of Chicago about this trick, and they go from they organize in groups, and they go to the cafeterias on the north side, south side, all over the city, and take advantage of this. And eventually, not sure if they caught on to him, but there was some sort of automation with the ticket system, and they couldn't do it anymore. In the same interview, he discusses his criminology dissertation. What he wanted to do was he wanted to study the Capone mob. So he hung around the New Lexington Hotel on South Michigan Avenue, which was the Capone outfit's hangout. And he tried to introduce himself to people, and it became, he's not having much luck with it. I mean, who's this pipsqueak who's not a gangster? Why is he hanging around us? And so he became friends with a man named Big Ed Stash. And Big Ed Stash apparently liked to tell the same stories over and over again. The other gangsters heard them all. So Alinsky swooped in there and was like, "Sir, tell me about this thing." And that's how he struck up a friendship with Big Ed Stash. And from there, he was introduced to Frank Nitti. And Frank Nitti was Capone's his right-hand man. And here's what Alinsky has to say about Frank Nitti. Nitti took me under his wing. I called him the professor, and I became his student. Nitti's boys took me everywhere. They showed me all the mob's operations, from gin mills to whorehouses and bookie joints to legitimate businesses they were beginning to take over. Within a few months, I got to know more about the inner workings of the Capone mob inside out. I'm not sure how accurate or how truthful he's being there, because it seems very provocative. Oh, I'm just going to hang out with gangsters. I became their friends. And the reason why I say that is because later on in the book, he talks about how they picked a certain day for an action, and it just coincidentally was Bastille Day. So he ran, somebody asked him about, you guys have this action on Bastille Day, and it was totally coincidence, but he ran with it and said it wasn't a coincidence. So I'm kind of, I don't know. I think Alinsky maybe, he may be fudging the truth there. I'm not sure. Plato asked him, didn't you have any compunction about consorting with, if not actually assisting murderers? To which Alinsky replied, not at all, since there was nothing I can do to stop them from murdering, practically all of which was done inside the family. I was a non-participating observer in their professional activities, although I joined their social life of food, drink, and women. Boy, I sure participated in those sides of things. It was heaven. Let me tell you something. I learned a whole lot of the uses and abuses of power from the mob. Lessons that stood with me in good stead later on when I was organizing. He describes how he became radical or realizing he was a radical all along during the Great Depression. And he says, same interview, I was starting to get actively involved in social issues. And during my last year in college, a bunch of us took up plight of the Southern Illinois coal workers who were in a tough organizational fight. Tough, Christ, the poor bastards were starving. And we got some food and supplies and chartered some trucks and drove down to them. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Southern Illinois coal strikes, but my last trip back from St. Louis, I actually stopped off in Mount Olive, Illinois, to see the resting place of Mother Jones, who is buried there with her comrades there in the Union. Excuse me one second. It's that time of year where it's really crappy for allergies. All right. She started working for state jobs, and in his spare time, he was organizing unions and raising money for the International Brigade and all these other sorts of things that a lot of radicals, communists, socialists in that time period did. This was like the heyday of the Communist Party. And, you know, being the son of Jewish immigrants, he probably had a window into this world, and probably identified with it. And so he doesn't have a strong reality. You know, he talks about communists being nice people during the Depression because they used to help coal miners and all this other stuff. So, you know, this was written during the Cold War, and he's kind of like, you know, some communists aren't too bad. And that's not in Rules for Radicals, by the way. I read that elsewhere. 1938, he founded the Back of the Yards Neighborhood Council. And he did that because he wanted to organize communities the way that labor unions organized industries. So in 1940, he founded the Industrial Areas Foundation, which is a network of local faith and local and community-based organizations. And IAF did a lot of organizing, including mentoring Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. Yes, we can. And they eventually went on to form the United Farm Workers. He was frequently arrested, jailed for his activities, and it was in prison that he wrote Reveille for Radicals, which is his first book. And that was Reveille for Radicals. Reveille, like a call to
Reveille.
Mispronouncing it?
Reveille is called, yeah, Reveille for Radicals.
It's one time here, so you guys need to hush up. Okay, so Rules for Radicals was published in 1969. He dies in 1972. And I never heard of Alinsky until Barack Obama came on the scene during his candidacy. And it was during this time that a lot of folks were like, well, we need to get in the mind of Obama. He's a community organizer. He said, you know, influenced by Saul Alinsky, perhaps this book can give us some insights into perhaps a future agenda he may be willing to oppose. And I will discuss here the purpose of Rules for Radicals. Prince was written by Machiavelli for the haves on how to hold power. Rules for Radicals was written for the have-nots on how to take it away. In this book, we are concerned with how to create mass organizations to seize power and give it to the people, to realize the democratic dream of equality, justice, peace, cooperation, full and equal opportunities in education, full and useful employment, health, and the creation of those circumstances in which man can have the chance to live by values that give meaning to his life. So that is why he wrote the book. And in the book, he describes 3 different class distinctions, right? You know, a lot of the, you know, during Obama's time, a lot of people were like, you know, Obama's a communist because he read this guy's book, you know, whatever. And Marxism does have, you know, 2 classes. You got the proletariat, you got the bourgeoisie. But what Alinsky does is he says that there are 3. They're the haves, the have-nots, and the have-a-little-want-mores. On some people with power, money, food, security, luxury, they suffocate in their surpluses while the have-nots starve. Numerically, the haves have always been the fewest. The haves want to keep things as they are and are opposed to change. Politically, they are cold and determined to freeze the status quo. On the ballot, they have nots. On the world scene, they are greatest numbers. They are chained together by common misery of poverty, rotten housing, disease, ignorance, political impotence, and despair. When they are employed, their jobs pay the least, and they are deprived in all areas of basic human growth. And then to talk about between the haves and the have-nots are the have-a-little-want-mores, the middle class. Torn between holding the status quo to protect what little they have, yet wanting to change so they can get more. They have split personalities. They can be described as social, economic, and political schizoids. Generally, they seek the safe way where they can profit by change and yet not risk losing what little they have. He goes on to say that the have-littles want mores. He said that the have-nots are the biggest in the world. But in the United States, he says that it's the have-a-little want mores. And he's going to appeal to the middle class later on in the book. So there's two sets of rules for radicals. There's rules of the means and ends, and then there's rules of tactics. So let us look at the rules of means and ends. Its concern with the ethics of means and ends varies inversely with one's personal interest in the issue. So he, right off the bat, is kind of positing this sort of subjective morality. 2, the judgment of the ethics and means is dependent upon the political position of those sitting in judgment. If you actively opposed the Nazi occupation and joined the underground resistance, you adopted the means of assassination, terror, property destruction, the bombing of tunnels and trains, kidnapping, the willingness to sacrifice innocent hostages to the end of defeating Nazis. Those who opposed the Nazi conquerors regarded the resistance as a secret army of selfless, patriotic idealists, courageous beyond expectation and willing to sacrifice their lives to their moral convictions. He also then talks about the Declaration of Independence. This is a great document, but the British hated it because they omitted things that they think that they did help the American colonizers, or colonists, rather. Third rule, in war, the ends always justify the any means. The context of the times in which the action occurred and not from any other chronological disadvantage. And he discusses the Boston Tea Party here. History, right? So when the critics later on come to the scene, they're trying to prove that Obama hates America because he reads Alinsky, and just not getting this idea that Alinsky hates America. It seems to me he's trying to tie these rules to classic American stories and people and events. The fifth rule, concerns ethics increases with the number of means available and vice versa. So if you're really poor and you don't have anything, you have nothing to lose, you're probably going to do something way more drastic to get what you want than you would be if you have more means to adjudicate things in your life. So that's what he discusses there. The sixth rule, the less important the end to be desired, the more one can afford to engage in ethical evaluations of means. Doesn't really elaborate on that. Seventh rule, generally success or failure is a mighty determinant of ethics. This is true. This is basically the old cliche that the victors write the history. He then goes on. The morality of a means depends on whether the means is being employed at a time of imminent defeat and victory. So he goes on to talk about bombing of the atomic bombing. The ninth rule, any means are judged by the opposition as being unethical. So even if you are being ethical, I guess, in your way, I mean, the enemy isn't going to look at you that way. The 10th rule, You do what you can with what you have and clothe it with moral garments. And then he goes on, he talks about Gandhi for quite a few chapters there. The 11th rule. The goals must be phrased in general terms like liberty, equality, fraternity, of common welfare, pursuit of happiness, bread and peace. He's kind of right here. You can't really get a lot of nuance when you're talking to people who are agitating for change. You know, that's why you go to a rally, lather about stuff. They talk in slogans. So there's that. It was rule learned from these set of rules. As I mentioned, these rules almost seem as if they have some sort of morally relativistic quality to them. So libertarians try to anchor their morality on the non-aggression principle or other first principles. And libertarians don't even agree on how broadly can we interpret the non-aggression principle. So certainly most libertarians, unless it came to it, probably be opposed to violent acts, violent means to your ends. Certainly would be against stealing or property destruction, that sort of thing. But we do live in a morally gray society, and sometimes you have to make decisions that might not entirely live up to your principles, but that's just sort of how it goes. Full libertarian, yet he got into office and then he drove up deficits and all sorts of other stuff. So, so there's that. So, the rules later on in the book, and these are the rules regarding tactics. The first rule: power is not only what you have, but what the enemy thinks you have. The second rule: never go outside the experience of your people. That comes in handy, especially if you're organizing poor inner city. You can't expect, if they have limitations based on their conditions, you can't expect them to do certain tactics. Third rule: go outside the experience of the enemy. And then here he uses General William Tecumseh Sherman's march to the sea as an example here. Fourth rule: make any rules. Certainly you should do that. I think that's completely fair. However, it's not, it doesn't make somebody wrong if they're a hypocrite, though. So if the Republicans are talking about that we want small government, and we want to get the government off the people's backs, I think it's completely fair to say, well, then why do you care so much about what people with matching genitals do in the privacy of their bedroom? So I think it's fair, but that doesn't make it wrong on everything. And certainly it's not, you're a hypocrite, therefore you're wrong. So you might want to be careful with that particular rule. Fifth rule: ridicule is a man's most potent weapon. And certainly this is true, but I don't think it's always fair. So for example, there's lots to disagree with J.B. Pritzker about. Lots of stuff to call him out. But I don't think calling him fat is really going to change anybody's mind. It doesn't address anything that he does that you're against. But perhaps you can make fun of somebody for the bad things they do as leaders. So perhaps you can make fun of JB for during the height of the pandemic after he shut everything down and chilling without mask in Wisconsin and other places. All right. The sixth rule: good tactic is, pardon me. A good tactic is one your people enjoy. Seems pretty straightforward. The tactic for too long becomes a drag. 8th rule, keep the pressure on. 9th rule, the threat is usually more terrifying than the thing itself. And this is an interesting rule because in the book, he talks about shit at O'Hare. So O'Hare built, Chicago built the O'Hare Airport. And they wanted, Alinsky's wanted stuff done. So they threatened O'Hare with a shit in. So basically, this was before 9/11, so you just kind of like hang out whenever in the airports. But you basically, you go in there and you perhaps pay to use the restroom and you just kind of hang out there. You're going to have people coming in from out of town who need to use the bathroom when they get off the planes. They won't be able to get in because they're all occupied. And there's not really anything you can do because you can't really, pound down the door to double check if they're doing their business or not. But when wind got out that Alinsky was wanting to do this, his opponent acquiesced. So the threat is usually more terrifying than the thing itself. Rule. The major purpose for tactics is the development of operations that will maintain constant pressure from the opposition. 11th rule. If you push hard and deep enough, it'll break through into the counter side. All right. 12th rule. The price of a successful attack is a constructive alternative. 13th rule. Freeze it, personalize it, polarize it. And these are rules for radicals that I think he is known for. Now, what can libertarians learn from these rules? Well, it's good advice, some of it is. But Alinsky uses the word enemy a lot, talk about his opponents. And I would be uncomfortable doing that because unless you're of really bad will, unless you come out with an attitude or with positions or whatever that are to hurt other people or to, then you might be my enemy. I'm going to call a socialist alderman I may have a disagreement with an enemy of mine. Despite sharp disagreement. I'm not uncomfortable. I'm just not comfortable with that. These can be useful, some good advice, but Alinsky was more than just these rules. He was able to unite church leaders and industrialists and capitalists. He was able to get Catholic clergy and martial fields together. And I think I want to learn how he was able to do that. I think that might be more practical than some of these rules here. He was going to close the book with a really lofty idea. And he thinks, well, maybe this is a good idea. Maybe I should quit IAF and focus solely on this. And what this idea is the proxy tactic. What the proxy tactic is basically shareholders give their vote to a proxy. The people can then go to the shareholders meeting and then make demands and work out issues, that sort of thing. And Alinsky did this with Rochester, in New Rochester, New York, where Kodak was. Kodak had promised to employ the people in Rochester, many of them poor and black, and then they ended up not doing that. So what they did was they were able to get, some of them bought shares of Kodak, others gave them their proxies, but they were to a shareholder meeting and come to the table and they were able to put pressure on Kodak and bam. And there's people who think that Alinsky's some secret communist. This is seizing the means of production, but it's stuck. So it's not like it's like the government is doing anything coercive here. He's, like I said earlier, he appeals to the middle class. Middle class, again, are the have little, want mores. So he appeals to the middle class who own stock and to colleges and corporations that own stock to give their proxies to organizations so they can go to the shareholder meetings and cause a scene. I think this is not a completely horrible idea. I think this is a very practical idea, depending on what kind of change you're looking for. So, for example, my bunch of Boeing stock and go to the shareholders meeting and then talk about how we need to shrink the military industrial complex or things like this. But will that convince people to do, if you buy certainly the more stock you have, the bigger say you have. And certainly if you're poor or middle class, you're not going to own as many stock as, say, rich folks. So there is a limit there in its effectiveness. But you could you could build a coalition. You can make a lot of noise. Even making a lot of noise, the threat is bigger than the actual whatever that was. The threat is usually more terrifying than the thing itself. So this proxy tactic, I think, is perhaps, to me, I find it to be the most interesting part of the book. And the socialists here in Chicago they call it democratize ComEd. We've had people here at the college talk about that. And I've countered that by saying, well, why don't we just buy stock in ComEd and then try to and I had no idea that this was something that Alinsky had sort of created a template for. So he closes the book and he says a couple interesting things here. And I want to read a passage here because I think it taps into a lot of what is happening in America right now. The category called middle class can be broken down into three groups: lower middle class, and upper middle class. I won't read the salary figures because they're kind of funny. Let's just say the middle class at the higher end was 35,000. That's what he's talking here. There are marked cultural differences between the lower middle class and the rest of the middle class. In the lower middle class, we encounter people who have struggled all their lives for what relatively little they have. With a few exceptions, such as teachers, they've never gone beyond high school. They've been committed to the values of success, getting ahead, security, having their own home, puts own in quotations there, auto, car, TV, friends. Their lives have been 90% unfilled dreams. To escape the frustration, they grasp at a last hope that their children will get that college education and realize the unfulfilled dreams. They are fearful people who feel threatened from all sides, and of retirement, with old age, with a Social Security decimated by inflation, the shadow of unemployment from a slumping economy, with blacks already fearsome because the cultures conflict, threatening job competition, the high cost of long-term illness, and finally, mortgages outstanding, the dread possibility of property devaluation. They're from non-whites moving into their neighborhood. They are beset by taxes on incomes, food, real estate, automobiles at all levels, city, state, and national. Seduced by their values to installment buying, they find themselves unable to meet long-term payments, let alone the current cost of living. Victimized by TV commercials with their fraudulent claims for food and medical products, they watch the news between commercial with state with Senate committee hearings showing that the purchase of these products is largely a waste of their hard-earned money. Repeated financial crises result from accidents that they thought they were insured against, only to experience the fine print evasions of one of their most shocking competence rackets today, the insurance racket. Their pleasures are simple: gardening a tiny backyard behind a small house, bungalow, or ticky-tacky, in a monotonous subdivision, or fringe of the suburbs, going on a Sunday drive to the country, having a once-a-week dinner at some place like a Howard Johnson. Many of the so-called hard hats, police, fire, sanitation workers, school teachers, and much of the civil service, mechanics, electricians, janitors, and semi-skilled workers are in this class. They look at poor as parasitic dependents, recipients of a vast variety of massive public programs, all paid for by them, quote, the public. They see the poor going to colleges with the waiving of admission requirements and given special financial aid. In many cases, lower middle class were defined by the opportunity of college by these very circumstances. Their bitterness is compounded by their also paying taxes for these colleges, for increased public services via police, public health, and welfare. They hear the poor demanding welfare as, quote, rights. To them, this is insult on top of injury. Seeking more meaning, they turn to extreme chauvinism and become defenders of, quote, the American faith. Now they even develop rationalizations for a life of futility and frustration. It's the red menace. Now, they're not only the most ferocious in their espousal of law and order, they're one of the victims for such demagoguery. George Wallace, the John Birch Society, and the Red Menace perennials. Insecure in their fast-changing world, they cling to illusory fixed points, which are very real to them. Even conversation is charting towards fixing your positions in the world. I don't want to argue with you. Just tell me what the flag means to you. Or what do you think of those college punks that never worked a day in their lives? They use revealing adjectives such as outside agitators, troublemakers, and other "when did you last beat your wife" questions. On the other side, they see the middle class and the upper middle class assuming a liberal, democratic, holier-than-thou position and attacking the bigotry of the unemployed poor. They see that through all kinds of tax evasion devices, the middle class and upper class can elude their share of the tax burdens, so that most of it comes back as they see it upon themselves, the lower middle class. So he's sort of empathizing with how poor people can kind of get trapped into bigotry, demagoguery, and I think that this is nothing is new under the sun, and I think that this is sort of speaks to the appeal of Donald Trump. So what do you ultimately think of Radicals? I think it's a great book. I think everybody should read it. It's interesting. He is a provocateur. He's got this punk rock heavy metal vibe to him that I can kind of get behind. And I really think that the people like Glenn Beck or the David Horowitzes of the world, David Horowitz just recently died, by the way. So they I don't know, are just I think that their reactionary reaction is very unwarranted. But he does say things that are provocative. But I mean, I just shrug them off. I don't see them as threats or anything. He's just he's pushing buttons is my ultimate feel of this. He kind of does this. Here's a very interesting passage. He does this riff on the old Lenin, like "I'll sell you the rope, which we will hang you by" thing. Here's what he says. Struggle among haves for their individual self-interest is short-sighted as struggle among the have-nots. I have on occasion remarked that I feel confident I could persuade a millionaire on Friday to subsidize a revolution on Saturday. Out of which he'll make a huge profit on Sunday, even though he was certain to be executed on Monday. Have-nots, or excuse me, the haves for their individual self-interest is as short-sighted as the struggle among the have-nots. I have on occasion remarked that I feel confident that I could persuade a millionaire on Friday to subsidize a revolution for Saturday, on which he'd make a huge profit on Sunday, even though he was certain to be executed on Monday. He's pulling your chain here. I don't think this is evidence of any, secret red conspiracy. And the reason I say that is because when has he ever done that? If anything, he had good relationships with prominent Chicago folks. So, and they probably, were aware of how provocative he was just being. And David Horowitz, Glenn Beck, it's just sort of the stuff that a lot of the Tea Party would say. And this is David Horowitz, Barack Obama's Rules for Revolution. He's got Marx, Lenin, Alinsky, Obama. It's a really silly guilt by association tactic here. Communists who identified their goal as a Soviet state and thereby generated opposition to their schemes. Alinsky and his followers organized their power bases without naming any end game, without declaring a specific future they want to achieve: socialism, communism, or dictatorship of the proletariat, or anarchy. Never does Alinsky ever talk about that sort of stuff. I think that this is, I know that David Horowitz spent some time on the left before he became a conservative, but he pretends to just read these people's minds and know what they're all about. Alinsky, or not Alinsky, but Horowitz and Glenn Beck and others would call Obama and Hillary disciples of Saul Alinsky, which is completely inaccurate. Hillary did meet Alinsky once, but she didn't endorse everything that he said. And Obama never met Alinsky either. So this idea that, oh man, they're disciples of Alinsky and we're just going to wait for the right moment, they're going to impose communism on America, that's just a bunch of crazy Tea Party paranoia that is certainly not warranted. If Alinsky loves America, he's using America as his examples for American examples for all his tactics. So, I'm not sure. It's really distracting, Tim, when you're going around talking. But wrapping it up, I think I've pretty much said all I have to. I'm got a bunch of cough medicine and allergy medicine in me, so I can't wait to go back to bed. But I do want to thank you for listening to me discuss rules for radicals on this special May Day in Chicago. So I guess I will open it up for questions. Yes, Karina.
Are you aware currently, are there any tactics that you're aware of right now of purchasing a stock and making sparks at the annual shareholders meeting, or?
I know Bernie Sanders, I think, was doing this while he was running for office. I don't know if he bought stock, but he certainly would show up to the shareholders meeting at Walmart. It's sure I heard the Democratic Socialists of America here in Chicago talk about democratizing ComEd. It was because Bernie visited a shareholders meeting that gave me the idea, like, well, can't you just, instead of trying to expropriate the power company's infrastructure, couldn't you just buy stock and go to a shareholder meeting? And so I'm not aware of anything doing it. I know that Bernie Sanders has taken the opportunity recently to go to shareholders meetings and kind of ask, Walmart and other companies to, I guess, follow his agenda or be nice or pay their people no more or whatever. Russell.
Now that about going to the sheriff, wouldn't that be up to the CEO of the company to allow that or not?
Well, I think some companies have changed their rule because of this, and reaction have changed the rules on who gets proxies. But if you're a proxy, I mean, you have a legal right to be there. You own stock, you know, or somebody owns stock is giving you their proxy. So,
Well,
I'm unaware of any. You know, I mean, I guess they could.
it's one thing if you own stock, but if you don't, I would think it would only be allowed if the CEO, it would be up to the CEO.
Well, I mean, I guess Alinsky didn't mention it, and that's a big glaring hole in his argument. So, questions for you?
Second one, I don't think Alinsky was some kind of closet communist. I think it was quite clear in the open.
Which specifically did
I think he was a clear communist.
all right, what did he say that makes you think that?
Well, just from what I heard people say,
You read this thing for yourself and not
the guy died in 72. Obama would have been 12.
yeah. Yeah, whoever, I mean, based on what you heard from other people is not a very good epistemological basis for one to get inside the head of Saul Alinsky. That's why I say just read the book. Just read the book.
You're going by what other people have said.
True, but you can also just read it for yourself. It's not like it's inaccessible and it's in a language you don't read. And if you read the book and then you read this critique by David Horowitz, Horowitz barely cites the book. It's all reading Obama's mind, reading the Democratic Party's mind, assuming that Obama wants to instill. I mean, did Obama impose communism on the United States? No, I don't think he did. I mean, if being a communist is the end game of this, then Alinsky himself and Obama and Hillary are horrible at it.
Okay,
All right, who's got a question?
you got a question online with Charlie, and I'm still having a little volume comes.
I got a question.
We'll get you next, George. Okay, Charlie, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, Justin, there's one thing about influencing the policy and practices of the company, and another one, you have to change the policy and practices of an industry. You have to influence government to issue law, rule, or regulations on production. You just can't just buy stock in one company. You'd have to buy them all.
What's your question?
Well, you're saying your plan doesn't work unless you should try to influence government.
That's
not just a company, one company. That doesn't achieve anything.
My argument, this is his argument.
Okay, hang on.
He was in a labor dispute. Now, it's been years since I thought about it, but he had a labor dispute with Kodak. That was kind of like labor management relations. Which made sense for that particular instance,
Charlie,
but it's not a generalized.
Move on to George.
Let's move on to George and hang on.
Well, you
I
didn't
apologize.
answer it.
Just a minute, Charlie. Let's get to it.
What
Okay,
is going on? He
all right,
didn't
hang on,
answer the
Charlie. Let me get
question.
you here. All right, George, I'm sorry, well, just speak loud, George.
I can hear you, George. Yeah, I'll repeat the question for the people on Zoom.
Thanks.
What politicians today do you think are using rules for radicals? I think Trump is using it when he ridicules his enemy. That's one of the rules of radicals. Who else does? I mean, who else do you think?
Well, ridiculing people is certainly easy to do. I don't think you have to read Alinsky to think that it's a good idea or an idea that helps you out. This question was, are there any people who are Alinskyites in the government? He said Donald Trump. Now, I highly doubt, I mean, maybe he did. I mean, maybe Trump did read Rules for Radicals and he's using it as part of his 4D chess strategy, and he makes fun of people because he read it in this book. It's very possible. It's very completely possible. I doubt it. And I think what Alinsky's legacy, Alinsky was a good organizer. I think people like Alinsky because of what he did, not by what he wrote.
Could you put that on? I think the microphone in sight. Just a second. Yeah, hang on.
All right, Professor Lincoln.
All right, Robert Lichtenberg. All right, Robert, you got the next question.
Okay, and terrific talk.
Loud, please.
Thank you.
Terrific talk. You're the hope of the college. You and youngins like you. But my question is, how would you define a radical using Alinsky's principles? Who is a radical?
It's radical. I don't have the definition in front of me, but he defines radical in a peculiar way that perhaps in a colloquial sense is not what radical means. He talks about he talks about radical. If you're a radical, you want to make sure the poor have adequate housing and food. And, yeah. If you're a radical, you want, high-paying jobs and workers' rights, that sort of. That's what he talked about being. That's what his definition of being a radical was. His definition was not, somebody who it just is really, has views that are outside the mainstream or anything like that. That's not how he's really defining it.
It's unusual use of radical. Radical is someone goes through the root. That's probably different from most people.
Yeah, radical, radish roots. They're all etymologically related. I'm actually kind of confused on what going back to the roots in a political context is. But yeah, when people do, you often do hear people who call themselves radical say, "We just want to go back to the roots. We want to get to the root of the thing." Yes.
I just want to make a comment on that.
Okay, loud, please.
Help the poor. That is a root. So anyway, my question was, you mentioned a movie really at the beginning of your talk, and you said it's a really bad movie. And I didn't know whether it was a bad movie or whether it was about a bad subject.
So Dinesh D'Souza directed this film called Hillary's America, The Secret History of the Democratic Party. Why it's bad? Well, for one, so Dinesh D'Souza was in prison for being a straw donor. He broke campaign finance laws and he spent several months in prison. He reenacts himself in prison. Like, he actually told people, "All right, I'm in prison, action," and they filmed this stuff. And it's supposed to be a documentary. And I guess that doesn't look bad. It's such a, if you know who Dinesh D'Souza is, but he's a conspiracy guy. He thinks he can read Obama's mind. But he tries to say, his argument is that because the Democrats supported slavery in the 1800s, therefore they're the same as they are now. He gives too much, I think, power to Alinsky and Alinsky's influence over the Democratic Party. His reenactments are all they get like the worst actors, and it's almost like History Channel quality reenactments. So I will go out of my way to watch his movies because I believe in seeing things for myself, and I'm a film guy, so why not? I'll watch any type of movie, including sort of right-wing documentaries. But yeah, Dinesh D'Souza is a horrible filmmaker, but his movies are kind of entertaining to watch because they're so ridiculous. Okay. Paid $4 to rent this movie while I was writing this, so I could see those reenactments. I spent money on this thing. I can't believe I did that. But I saw it in the theater too, so I guess I paid for it. All right, who's got other questions?
Was it Dinesh D'Souza, the same one who did 10,000 Mules?
I think it was 20,000 Mules or
10,000 Mules, which is he
was played so loose with facts in that movie. People were suing the distributors that the distributors dropped distributing the movie because it was so inaccurate. Because it was a lie, you know. He was this movie was telling, you know, names of people of being suspected fraudsters, and people harassing these people that were made in the movie, that were mentioned in the movie, and it got so bad that the distributors dropped distribution because it was so inaccurate.
Okay. Can I get the mic again? Charlie's got another question. I'm sorry. My apologies. This should be fixed by next week. I got this trouble.
All right, Charlie, you're going to go next.
All right, Charlie, your hand's up. Go ahead. Charlie?
I would like to know, what is the Libertarian Party platform? What is their plan for helping the have-nots to become the middle, to go upward mobility, to become those who have and want a little more?
Libertarians believe in creating conditions that are the best for getting people to open businesses, to hire people, and that sort of thing. So we would cut red tape to make it easier for people to employ themselves. We'd cut taxes, so it's cheaper for people to start businesses and to pay employees. We certainly would have nothing against workers collectively bargaining with other entities and entering into contracts. Certainly
question
that workers can organize their own enterprises in ways they think are beneficial. So, you know, you got these worker-owned breweries all around Wisconsin. You've got, you know, I worked for a company recently that let the employees, you know, help decision making, but they got input from employees. Whole Foods has a degree of employee management, a degree of it, not complete. So there's several things that libertarians would not be opposed to that
follow-up question.
Allow for workers to organize in certain ways that are beneficial to them.
Okay.
I have a follow-up question.
Okay, he's got a follow-up. I mean, I can.
He didn't answer.
You can't hear you.
Here, Tim, sit down.
Charlie, what do you say?
65, at least 65%. I just read the figures. At least 60. You tell me, oh, the way to success is to start your own business. 65% of the new businesses don't make it the first year or two. They fail. Also, new businesses are the worst places for employment because they have no benefits and the lowest wages. Money is at a premium. So your solution has some flow. Why start a business? You're telling me, oh, all you have to do is start a business.
He's not asking questions.
Is that your answer?
The next person who has a question.
Okay, who else has a question?
I didn't answer it.
George, go ahead.
Obama learned Marxism under a mentor in Hawaii and also at Columbia College, where they had a lot of anti-American groups there. And he learned Marxism. But do you think he learned, he was a community organizer in Chicago. He must have learned from rules for radicals, right?
He must have. Really couldn't tell you. I've never read. I just know that he was a community organizer. Obama was, and may have had learned a few things from Alinsky as his time as an organizer. Learning. I mean, there's, like I said, this book is. I think you guys are giving this book more power than it actually has. I mean, there's nothing in here that talks about communism or socialism or anything. And I mean, it was Obama continued the Bush foreign policy. Obama didn't nationalize all industry. He didn't do a lot of things that you'd think a communist would do. So people when they're in college, they flirt with different political ideologies. I'm not going to hold Barack Obama. I'm going to use his fascination with maybe Marxism, if he, depending on how fascinated he was on this. I don't know for certain, but I'm not going to. So what? He read Marx in college and whatever. I mean, that doesn't prove anything. Most people change through time. Most people don't. I'm a libertarian. Minds change on a lot of things since I was a child or a teenager. He was in college. I don't think he ruled as a communist.
But he said he wants to fundamentally change the direction of this country, and he's talking about socialism.
So Obama used the S word.
Well, you see what's happened from him. We get the progressives, and the progressives. You see what they did when their agenda,
which is what
they took over the Democratic Party. The wokeism and the border and
he got a strong capitalist financial wing to them.
But the progressives control the party.
I don't know who controls the Democratic Party.
That whole group there, and the AOC, and
she controls the party. I didn't know that. Bernie's chair of the party. Is she run
for president? That's what they're talking.
Huh?
They're talking for her to run for president.
She because her views are horrible. She's not going to win. She's not. The Democrats, some Democrats probably do want her to win. That doesn't mean that the Democrats all want her to win or want her to run. I mean, for wrong wanting to change the direction of the country, because isn't that what Trump is doing?
Yeah.
I mean, if changing the direction of the country is somehow an admission that you're a socialist, then I guess Trump is a socialist, right? If he wants to fundamentally change, can you quote Saul Alinsky or Barack Obama praising socialism?
Many times he wants to fundamentally change this country, and he's talking about socialism.
How do you know he's talking about socialism?
And he has the plan. The plan is bring all these illegals in, 20 million of them, put them on welfare, bankrupt the country, and then the people will vote for socialism. It's the plan in Colombia.
I mentioned he was going to do that.
It was at Colombia. He was in those groups.
Were you there?
No, but what did you say?
Well, I'm asking you for examples. You can't provide me examples. You're trying to read Obama's mind. Obama wants to change the country, therefore he's a socialist. That's a really stupid argument. It's also flawed. Just because the argument was stupid.
Okay.
Anybody who wants to change something is a socialist?
Okay.
Is that what you're saying?
He was mentored under Marxist.
Which communist mentored him?
The one in Hawaii. I don't know his name, but he's a famous.
You don't know. Got it.
He was tutored under this Marxist in Hawaii, and then he went to Columbia College,
University,
and he studied with these Marxist groups and they had
college. I probably had in high school
with some. What was some there?
You didn't provide any evidence to support your claim, sir. Really tore up, sir.
Okay, we have another one online. Let me get the mic from you real quick. All right, I think that's you. You got your hand up on mute. Let's hear from you, Chase. Jake, if you okay, go ahead.
Okay. Point of information. Obama expelled more illegal immigrants than any of his predecessors. My question to the speaker, thank you for your talk. My question: what's the relationship between David Horowitz and Saul Alinsky?
Sure, if they had any direct relationship personally, if he is, Horowitz didn't mention it, but Horowitz was a member of the New Left in the '60s, and I think he got himself with Ramparts, that the magazine, and then he got himself in with the Black Panthers, and then he became, I guess, more conservative as he got older, repudiated his leftism of his youth, and became kind of a chud for the remaining years of his life. A chud. That is a internet slang for like a right-wing totalitarian. Because Horowitz was a huge Trump fan, by the way, and died, so rest his soul. But I think he had any direct relationship. I'm sure he was familiar with Alinsky's work. He's probably knew people who knew Alinsky. He probably read Rules for Radicals, but you probably couldn't tell, because his summary of it is a lot of reading Saul Alinsky's mind and saying things that aren't explicitly in Rules for Radicals. You know their relationship. I'm sure, Horowitz met him. He failed to mention it in any of the writings that he had. That's all I know, unfortunately.
Okay, I got a question for you. There's another guy who was from the Albert Einstein Institute by the name of Gene Sharp, who wrote a book called From Dictatorship to Democracy. Are you familiar with his work?
I'm not.
Okay, because he wrote 163 different ways to anyway, what he did was he wrote a book on how to change a dictatorship to a democracy by 163 ways to basically protest the government. Things from like mass protests, and when you protest, you put the women and children up front so that the army can, and then you make sure you have it peaceful, sick outs. And then he said the most effective way was to convince the people backing him that he's no longer in power, and they could reform it. It was a good book, but in Saul Alinsky and some of the things you're talking about kind of remind me of his book a little bit. With that, I'll just, since you don't know much about it, can't comment.
Sounds like it's interesting.
It's available online and you can pick it up. Okay,
Jen, what's up?
Jen, you got another question, please.
Started out, if you push a negative hard enough, and then you finish the rule and went on, but that really interested me, and I wonder if you could find it again.
Yeah, sure.
What Alinsky said about it. Your second set of rules. Push a negative hard enough something.
So that is rule. So let me look that up here. Yeah. Okay. We have, so here's how he elaborates on that rule. This is based on the principle that every positive has a negative. Oh, excuse me. The 11th rule is if you push a negative hard and deep enough, it'll break through to the counter side. This rule is based on the principle that every positive has a negative. We have already seen the conversion of the negative into positive, Mahatma Gandhi's development of the tactic of passive resistance. What corporation we organized against responded to the continuous application of pressure by burglarizing my home and then using the keys taken in the burglary to burglarize the offices of the Industrial Areas Foundation where I work. The panic in this corporation was clear from the nature of the burglaries, for nothing was taken in either burglary to make it seem that the thieves were interested in ordinary loot. They took out the records that applied to that corporation. Even the most amateurish burglar would have had more sense to do, than to do what the private detective agency hired by that corporation did. the police departments in California and Chicago agreed that, quote, the corporation might as well have just left its fingertips all over the place.
Yeah.
In a fight, almost anything goes. It almost reaches to the point where you can stop to apologize if the chance blow lands above the belt. When a corporation bungles like the one that burglarized my office, my visible public reaction is shock, horror, and moral outrage. In this case, we let it know that sooner or later it would be confronted with the crime as well as a whole series of other derelictions before United States Senate subcommittee. So
how do I'm not getting what that means. If you push a negative hard enough, it will break through to the other side. I don't.
He doesn't really. That's basically all he elaborated with it.
Okay. We have one more question from.
Sure.
Let me borrow that again. So. Okay.
Hello. Oh.
Jake, you're going to be next, so go ahead with your question.
Got one more quick question. What was the name of the film that you mentioned earlier?
It was called Hillary's America: The Secret History of the Democratic Party, which is currently available for rent on Amazon.
Oh, and who Hillary's America? Who's the producer?
Who was the producer?
Dinesh D'Souza.
Dinesh D'Souza. He's the one who did 10,000 Mules too.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Go ahead, Jan.
Buying stock and then using a proxy. Why couldn't they just go directly to the meeting and not need, what is that? What is it?
Because he wants the board to be represented, to represent themselves. He doesn't want people.
What's the proxy got to do with it?
Because you can stock. I can give my vote to you, and you can go to the shareholder meeting and vote. You could. I agree that's peculiar. Because I was wondering the same thing too when I'm reading this. I'm like, why doesn't he just ask? Like, I think what he's trying to do is he wants the poor people or the people who would benefit from that, to be the ones that are doing the negotiating. And I also think that he may have concern about poor people spending money they don't have to buy stocks. It's interesting. It's what I think.
Okay.
But thank you.
All right, Jake, we got one more. One more, Jake. Then we're gonna be.
This is the fifth one more.
Jake, this is.
No. I don't have another question. No, you can go on. No more questions. You can go on.
Oh, your hand was up. All right, we're gonna go to rebuttals now. And I'm gonna entertain those in the studio in the room here first. So if you got a rebuttal, we're gonna give everybody about 5 minutes or so. And if you want to go on, okay. If you want to go, George, if you'd like to go first, go ahead. And then we'll go with okay, well, sir.
Tim, I've got a 3-minute thing, or even less. Yeah.
We'll give everybody 5 minutes. Let's thank our speaker. He did a good job tonight with his speech. Okay.
I really appreciate this talk, Justin, because it's a book that I've had a lot of curiosity about, but never gotten to read. I'm rebutting my own announcement that I made. We're not having Joe Rahm on the 29th of May. It's going to be Paul Gunter on the 29th of May. That's all set up. And I'm hoping to have Joe Rahm at the end of June. But I really goofed by saying that we're going to have Joe Rahm in May, because we're not. It's going to be Paul Gunter from Beyond Nuclear. That was my rebuttal. I was rebutting myself.
5 minutes, sir.
Thank you once again, Justin Tucker. talked to people all over the spectrum my whole life. And for every conversation that I've had with Justin Tucker, I feel like the Fred Hampton ethos of we can all find common cause to make this a country better for everyone across radical differences of opinion, because they're just in our minds. They're not actually in the physical world. We actually meet people face to face and talk to them. That's why I always appreciate the dialogue. When my brother Justin and I have conversation about these issues, because we disagree on how to get there, but I don't ever hear us disagreeing on the destination, which is a country of all, by all, for all, and a planet where quality of life is as high as possible. When I think about May Day, and I think about Chicago, where May Day was born, and Saul Alinsky, of course, from the 1930s to the 1970s, talked to people in the neighborhoods of Chicago about their concerns, what they wanted for their neighborhood, what they wanted for their families, for their lives, for their communities, for their future. Feeling that he was trying to destroy America. He was trying to save America. King alluded to this on one of the very last sermon that he was writing. I don't know if he ever gave this sermon, but he was writing a sermon where it was tentatively titled, America Might Go to Hell. He was alluding to how African Americans might be moving into a burning house, which is America. In this country, the media is, whatever you say about politicians, the media gets an F-, and that's thanks to both Republican Newt Gingrich and Democrat Bill Clinton for the Telecommunications Act. We never hear a debate from actual left and the right. We hear from the extreme right and the slightly less extreme right. I'm sorry to tell people in Chicago, Illinois, and I know this is blasphemous, Democrats are not the left. They're liberals. Stop watching corporate news. If corporate news is trying to sell you more cars and more beer and more cell phones and more pharmaceutical products and everything that you don't need, don't want, and can't afford, that's how you know when they tell you that someone is the left and they mention a Democrat, but they don't know what the hell they're talking about based on the global spectrum of what is right and what is left. We're 4% of the planet. We're the most propagandized people in the world. What we think is the left is not the left. I'm sorry. You'll never hear a debate from an actual left person and a Republican. You know why? Because, in my opinion, the majority of people would want to know more about what that actual left person's policy platform is. There's someone by the name of Shama Sawant, who I always mention, and I'll continue to mention her name. She's a Seattle City Councilwoman. There's someone else who's a mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, named Chokely Lumumba Jr. There's someone else named Dennis Kucinich. The list goes on and on and on. Now, if the right is so convinced that its principles and its values and its policy platforms are so strong, why are they ever afraid to actually debate the real left? Why do they only debate people who always say, my good friend on the other side of the aisle, Democrats who vote for the same wars, the same unconstitutional surveillance, and the same bailouts to Wall Street every single time, and then we fall asleep like sheep voting for the F- or the F party instead of what we deserve, which is an A party. I'll read a poem real quick. There's a human voice inside the parade. We want to hear them speak. They got something to say. Loud dissent, solve the fields. Is all our blessing to serve the earth her peeps. There's a true voice from inside the charade. They will rue the day when we bloom real change and introduce new ways to be a true human race. Strong and with all our dreams, forever is a never-ending heartbeat. They will rue the day. They will lose their brains when we unroot the anchor in a movement shakeup. We are who God gave the strength to win for all we. This is not a game. It's only a question when we lack peace. This is not a game. Thank you again, Justin, for remembering one of Chicago's beloved organizers, the late, great Saul Alinsky.
His name was on the Freedom Wall, which has now been covered up, but
It's your next online. Your hands up, and we'll get through that theater after George goes.
Well, I just wanted to say that I thought Justin had a very good presentation, but I'll say one other thing. He's a very rude person. Anyway, some maxims from the Saul Alinsky rules for radicals. Great teachers have a universal agreement that self-interest plays as a prime moving force in men's behavior. Self-interest, remember that. Socrates was an organizer. The function of an organizer is to raise questions that agitate, that break through accepted patterns. The job of an organizer is to maneuver and bait the establishment so that it will publicly attack him as a dangerous enemy. Change comes from power, and power comes from organization. People must get together, the radicals with the radicals. The first step in community organization is community disorganization. They want to do disruption. These are all maxims in the book. This is not necessarily the rules for radicals, it's other observations in the book. An organizer must stir up dissatisfaction and discontent. Power is not only what you have, but what the enemy thinks you have. That is a rule. The threat is usually more terrifying than the thing itself. That's a rule also. The enemy, properly goaded and guided in his reaction, will be your major strength. The one thing that is unforgivable and that is certain to get him to react is to laugh at him. This is in the book. This causes an irrational anger. I think this is what Trump does. He calls people funny names and he contradicts them and tries to get people to laugh at them. And I think he's read the rules of a lot of politicians have read this, and if you watch what they say and you can recognize some of these rules. Okay. The one thing that all oppressed people want to do to their oppressors is to demean them. And they didn't use the word demean either. Every organization must have 2 or 3 stool pigeons who are trusted by the establishment. They are invaluable as trustworthy lines of communication to the establishment. So they use people who work for the establishment to be stool pigeons. Our rebels have rejected the values and way of life of the middle class. And then another observation, seek out allies. I know at people at the post office, this guy was he was trying to get organization people seeking allies. The lower middle class are a fearful people who feel threatened from all sides. The government represents the upper class, but not us, not the lower middle class. That's in the book. I don't know if I agree with that. Those whom the gods would destroy, they first make ludicrous, make them a laughing stock. That's what Trump does. Well, he has to be aggressive to stop all this progressive stuff that they've been putting forth. Periodic removal from circulation by being jailed is an essential element in the development of the revolutionary. In other words, they don't mind going, it's a positive for them to go to jail. Okay, thank you.
Well, if going to jail is bad, I guess January 2nd you do that.
I've been hearing so much tonight about, rules for radicals, about and about various radical leftists and various other things. I today was watching several people who voted for our illustrious President Donald J. Trump, and the things that he's been doing to our country. And frankly, I'm appalled. I am literally hoping that this guy gets impeached. And the reason I think so is that he's starting to do things that are unconstitutional, violating constitutional rights of people, denying due process to other people, and a bunch of other things that I need not elaborate on. Now, George, I respect you and I respect your opinions, but I think you're about Trump and your support of him. I think you're wrong. And the reason I think you're wrong is that I was a Reagan Republican for years. I still believe in free markets. I still believe in things like individual responsibility. But I've also seen how a lot of these large corporations have started to take advantage of people, have started to do things that are basically immoral and basically just quote unquote not nice. And when it comes to paying taxes, I do believe the rich do need to pay their fair share, as well as everybody else. And that brings me to something else too, about our own college here. When we do charge a $3 tuition to help defer expenses, but somebody did say, where do they go? Well, a lot of it, for the first part of it, real quick, it costs me about $40 every time I come here. If I don't do anything between gas, ordering a meal, and coming back and everything else, that's where part of the $3 go. It also helps cover the fees for the speaker's meal. And we've not made enough over time to do just that. Also, Charlie has expenses with the meetup fees, the website hosting, and various other things. We haven't taken account of it because we didn't feel we had to, because it's a volunteer organization. Both me and Charlie have done things that this is a money-losing venture for us, but we feel that it's valuable and alive to help keep it out. Now, you guys who come here every week, thank God that your tuition was covered by somebody else, Mr. Lichtenberg. But you come here and you say, oh, well, what do you do with your money? And oh, what do you do with your things? I'll tell you, it's not enough to cover expenses, barely. And we do enough of it. And like I said, the last time you spoke and I covered for you, you had a $35 speaker bill. I lost about $40 that night, at least. And there's been a number of times that you've done that. And to me, that simply says this: if you can't afford the $3, go on Zoom. We got it there. We're trying to do this as a service to people. Now, I'm not saying that it's here, but I really get resentful when we ask all of you just to pay a little bit. I've even waived tuition a number of times here because of certain technical problems where I felt the program wasn't up and running.
Speak on the topic, please. Not talking.
Well, the thing is, Bob, we are speaking on the topic tonight because what we're doing.
But that's all I went to you talking about.
Well, the thing is, I'm also taking the stance and taking the rules of radicalization to condemn you for forgetting to do something as simple as paying your fair share for this college. And
All right, we'll get you in a minute, Jake.
He talks about they're afraid of socialism. America's social. We've had an income tax for many years, decades and decades. All the fire, police, all the lights for all the billions of streets we have, they're all paid by taxes. And Social Security, the year paid for by collective. So I don't know why some people are afraid of the word socialism. I never get that. Communism is a whole different bag, that sort of state controls everything. But America's socialist quite a bit right now compared to a lot of modern countries. So so far, Trump just talks like a lot of stupid old man, crazy whack job stuff. So, but the real things I want him to take care of still are make sure that America's not involved in a genocide, murdering kids and journalists and doctors in Gaza or Palestine. And I hope he's, makes a big stand about that eventually. And then the other thing is the giving away tax money. So he gave away $4 or $5 trillion to the super rich 8 years ago. And now I think at the end of May, we're going to find out if how much Trump's going to steal. The Republicans are going to steal. And that's really the big, the big issue here. Not his crazy, get rid of straws, get rid of, the arts, don't fund that, don't fund. It's just crazy, holy crap. This guy's a blowhard and it's going crazy anyway. So, anyways, so yeah, just America's already been schooled or socialized, hospitals, social security, all that stuff. And then people come up here, oh, we're going to be socialized, we're going to be communists. Bullshit. All right. These glasses.
They're not, are they friends?
Oh, it's mine. It's always mine. Jonathan. Those are socialized glasses. No wonder it's here. Where I can see you.
Yeah, you better get them before somebody homesteads them.
I'll never forget the time I was watching Firing Line. And of course it was Buckley versus Norman Mailer, which is always a kick. And so Norman Mailer says, Buckley was more or less complaining about the taxes that the rich had to pay. And Norman Mailer says, do you know any, because at that time, people above a certain income had to pay 90% of their income in taxes. And Norman Mailer says to him, do you know anybody that's paying 90%? And Buckley says, my mother. That was the most perfect comeback I've ever heard. And so I was thinking about it, and his mother probably lives on the income from investments. And I don't know how much her income had been at that time, but just surmising that she was getting $1 million a year from her investments, and she had to pay 90% of that in taxes, which means that she would be left with a mere $100,000 to live on for the year. Mm-hmm. And I think that when we view what the rich have to pay in taxes, that what we don't get logarithmic increase. We don't think about the fact that $1 million. Let's see. If you start out with $1,000, $1,000 times that much is $1 million. So from $1,000 you go to $1 million with a factor of 1,000. And then when you go from $1 million to $1 billion, $1 billion is 1,000 times $1 million. And you've already done 1,000 times 1,000. And then you go to 1,000 times $1 million to get to $1 billion. And then if you want to go to $1 trillion, it's 1,000 billions to make $1 trillion. And so when you consider taxing the rich, you've got to realize that, like I was saying, a rich person has an income of 1 million, which many of them do, and you tax them at 90%, they've still got $100,000 to live on. And this thing that I know has that kind of money. So I think keeping in perspective the idea of taxing the rich. Another thing was there was considered a 2 or 3% tax on the amount of money that the rich have in investments and savings. And, you know, a person can have 2 or 3 million in savings or in investments. And if you charge that if you tax that at 2 or 3%, the amount left is huge. So if you could just keep in mind logarithmic increase, and I'm going to say it one more time and then I promise not to say it again. Okay, 1 million is 1,000 times 1,000. A billion is 1,000 times 1 million. And a trillion is 1,000 times 1 billion. So, you know,
Jake, go ahead and unmute and let's get you up for your rebuttal. Jake? Jake, you got your hand up?
Hey.
You want to go ahead, Jake.
Yeah.
Hang on.
Okay. I'm writing a new musical, Springtime for Donald. Kind of like The Producers. It's bad Mel Brooks. At any rate, thank you for your talk. They just to elaborate on what Tim was saying. There are things in his upcoming budget, which fortunately has not been voted on yet, which are horrible, not just for poor and middle class people, but for everybody. For example, he's cutting funding for the FDIC. The FDIC, this is his proposal. The FDIC is the corporation that was set up back in the 1930s to ensure our bank deposits. So what that means is that the banks pay for them, and we pay for them when we open up a bank account. We pay a small service fee, which goes pay for the bank's insurance. But if he's going to pull out federal subsidies to the FDIC, it means our insurance rates will go up, or the banks will make changes. Will change the rules as to how much money you can keep in an account at any given time, or they'll be more restrictive as to who they will accept as a customer, et cetera, et cetera. And it's bad. It's bad for consumers, and it's bad for the banks, and it's bad for business. So there are economists, both liberal and conservative, who are saying that Trump's economic policies will not work. Oh, also, I remember after the stock market crashed in 1929, one of the first things that Herbert Hoover did was he placed tariffs on foreign products. International trade slowed down to a crawl, and it just made the economy worse. Everything that Hoover tried to bring back the economy just made it worse. And it looks like, as I said, there are economists, both liberal and conservative, who are saying that what Trump is doing is that Trump's economic policies are wrong and just make the economy worse. So he's going to be following in the line of Herbert Hoover. He does not have a magic wand.
Okay.
And one other thing. He was speaking in Michigan the other day to a group of true believers. This is a guy who his supporters will believe him no matter what he says and no matter what he does. If he were to rob a bank in broad daylight, they'd still love him.
Jake,
I call them Trump fundamentalists. It's like a religion to them.
Okay, Jake,
anyway, okay.
All right, Charlie, I'm going to get you next, but I gotta because I'm on the Carter's Guest Wi-Fi tonight. I gotta renew the connection. So
we'll be signing off real quick and then getting back online in a second or two. So just give me a minute if you don't mind while I renew the connection, okay? Guys, you stay right there. Charlie, I'm going to temporarily transfer control to you real quick for the I'm going to make you the host. Yeah, and just bear with me for a minute while I renew connections, okay? If you don't mind. Just bear with me for a second, okay? While we get it taken care of. So just bear with me for a minute, okay? All right, I'm going to try now to renew connections, so just bear with me.
Sure. Right off. So no one ever paid them 90.
Are you guys there again? Okay, all right, Charlie, you're up next, so go ahead. I got the connection.
Am I
Hang
all
on.
coming through?
Yeah, we're coming through now. Go ahead, Charlie.
All right, let's take a speaker for, thank you, Justin, for a May Day thing and an overview of a topic we haven't covered. I'm going to cover 4 things tonight. In sequence, they're unrelated. Number 1, I'm familiar with Alinsky because Bridgeport, where I reside, is a neighboring community of the back of the yards. The back of the yards are focused on about 47th and Ashland. And I had occasion to spend time there and shop there quite frequently. They had a Goldblatt's and an Army surplus store and things like that. So I had a much occasion to know about the back of the yards. They still maintain a newspaper, Back of the Yards Journal, I believe. I used to read it on occasion. I also had to study Alinsky while I was enrolled at the Jane Addams School of Social Work and as a community organizer. We covered Alinsky as well. His basic thing was to establish a community organization, beginning by just talking to people, going around the neighborhood, oddly enough, and soliciting people. The idea of the concept is to have a community organization to seek self-improvement. Every community, I guess, can merit some sort of improvement. So on their own, they tried to have a community organization in Bridgeport Alliance, but it lasted only about a year or two, and I don't think the right people were operating it. They were kind of strange. I could tell you some stories. I stopped going because they were kind of strange people, rules and things. But anyhow, yes, if you want to, and the larger thing is these rules pertain to those who have larger movements for social change. That's the goal of it, social change. Now you can have it into larger organizations that advocate social change, usually dealing with individuals who can grant the remedy you seek. That's Saul Alinsky. How do you persuade the people who can grant the remedy you seek to act? You know, he had one thing. It was not his basic plan. There was a labor dispute in Kodak and Buffalo, but he didn't. That doesn't mean the way to buy stock is the solution for remedy to capitalism. That's not going to happen. We're going to purify every company in the United States. No, that's not going to happen. Anyhow, it's a way of community organizing. I'll speak a little bit further on it later on this. Number 2, the Libertarians, he didn't answer the question. Libertarians' way of upward mobility, if you feel you are a have-not, is to open a business. Unfortunately, they don't seem to understand, the Libertarians, is that the Industrial Revolution that began 1760, 1780, in which all small businesses were abolished. Originally, there were independent weavers who made cloth. And the solution, like here, well, instead of independent carpenter shops, they were replaced by factories that made furniture, chairs and tables and beds and whatnot, cabinets and what have you. Now, the Libertarians come along and say, well, start a carpenter shop. Well, what chance do you have of succeeding against the factory produced goods at a fraction of the cost? That's what I mean. It's not realistic. 65% of the small businesses, at least, are going to fail. So it's a waste of time. Don't undertake it. You don't even have a 50-50 chance of succeeding. That's ridiculous. That's a solution. Oh, you got you have less than a 50-50 chance of succeeding. Go do this. Oh, yeah, this is somebody's advice. No, you want the odds a little bit better. If you're going to suggest somebody do something, you better have the odds in their favor. You know, I'm not saying absolutes are perfect, but if your solution recommendation has to be at least some real, aren't you in the real world? Get in the real world. Number 3, Alinsky is talked about. I'm a union organizer. It's been covered by many. I've been at many meetings I've attended on how do you organize a union. Now, some people say the union movement isn't doing well because they're operating like a business. People join the union, and then a few people run the union like they would a business. Like you pay money to join the movement, and you kind of then relax, nothing to do. And the business, you know, if you want to file a grievance, the business reps will do that for you. And everybody can, it's like a service. Exactly. Are you providing a service to people? That's when you're joining. The Alinsky approach to organizing is community-based organizing, meaning you can develop what is called solidarity among the workforce. You talk to the individuals. We have a guy now that believes this. So I put him in charge of talking to new employees. You charge them up. You tell them, yes, you can change the conditions of employment if we all act together in solidarity. And they say this way people will look upon it as their union, their organization, and they're willing to put out sacrifices for it. So that's what I mean. There's 2 developments. You have the old development. Now the problem with the community-based is labor relations has gotten very legal, and you do need the professionals to handle it. Labor relations of most employers are lawyers, and so it's become over legalistic, and it's not like Alinsky might not work homegrown kind of organizing, and when they have to go to litigation or something, you need certain basic skills. So both of them have certainly a merit to them. The 4th thing I'd like to talk about, we've heard about Trump, is I'd highly recommend this video. You can find it on YouTube. And Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts gave a speech, and she listed, are you listening, George? The 100 crimes Trump has committed in the brief period of time Trump too, he's been in office the 2nd time. She outlined 100 specific crimes Trump has committed. Now, if you want a criminal, an idiot criminal, out for his own personal gain, or personal gain for a few, then you like Trump. If you're not one of those personal few, it eludes me what you get. Now, a lot of people are dissatisfied. They feel the liberals and the Democratic Party have paid way too much attention to the needs of immigrants and minorities and transvestites and what have you, the gay crowd, and disregarded people. Oh, we work so hard every day and nobody pays attention to me. The forgotten masses. And Trump now cares about me. He's just like me, you know. Yes, and no matter what you say about Trump, they're going to discredit the speaker and they're going to put a spin on it. Some kind of spin on it. Expect it. Even times these spins are silly, but we have to deal with the fact that what saddens me the greatest is that Trump, this country was known, if anything, for an orderly transition of power. And this son of a bitch totally disregarded that. And that's a pretty stain upon our history of our nation, with caliber, and the fact that he totally, yes, you know, he's still talking about it. He doesn't recognize the basic rules that apply to everybody, you know, but he didn't recognize the orderly transition of power. And for that, I have no regard for him. If you lose an election, you congratulate the winner and move on. Nobody cheated you. You lost flat out. They did better. No big deal. And he couldn't accept that. That's what I mean. All right, that's basically it. Sorry to hear about Professor Littensberg. I guess he's mad because he borrowed money from me and I made him pay it back. So now he's retaliating, you know. He said he didn't want to have to pay me back because he wanted to finance his book, hire a literary agent for $900. And I said, well, you got to pay me back, you know, come on. But all right, that's it, Tim. Thank you very much.
Okay, all right, Jake, you want to say something else? Jake, I'll give you the spotlight before I go back to
the topic.
Yeah, I support small businesses.
I mean,
okay.
again, small business owing money.
All right, anybody else? All right, did you want to say anything else?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. Now get the mic. Okay.
Crooks in this country.
Okay, we're getting another rebuttal coming up, so just give us a second here, please.
Trump, we're a country of criminals and corruption.
All right.
Go ahead. Trump then.
And corruption.
Yeah.
Hey, look at that.
All right, go ahead.
Question of paying your fair share. Oh, I want to know what is going to fair share?
More.
Well, you want 92% tax rate again?
Yes, I'm never super rich. That's absolutely. If I was super rich, I go, yeah, okay.
You realize when there's 92% tax rate, there was also one liberal deduction. No one paid 92%. You're lucky if they paid 50 to 40.
Yes.
Right.
He's right.
But then you're getting also into tax policy.
There's a lot of super rich that give away money. Look at Gates's ex-wife.
And Bill Gates himself to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Look at Andrew Carnegie.
And also, and not only Rockefellers did it too.
Praise that old guy. She knows.
Your lower tax rates, then you have a lot lower deductions where you can fill out your income tax on a postcard. I have nothing wrong with Trump. Well, when it comes to tariffs, I say go back where you had tariffs and no income tax. Talk about Alinsky. Go back to the days of McKinley.
Trump achieved.
when America was truly great.
Oh, ridiculous.
Oh, did he ever
It's ridiculous. What you're talking about is ridiculous.
Well, I'm talking about tax policy, and whoever is in control can form their own tax policy.
What?
They're gonna steal again, $5 trillion.
Steal, it's their money. How many is that steal?
All right.
Well, who's gonna pay for all the lights on all the billions of roads, miles of road?
Who's gonna,
Doesn't, just because it's theft doesn't mean like,
Who's gonna pay for all the colleges and high schools and grade schools?
even in the wealth of nations, there was something known as the commons that Adam Smith told everybody to pay for. So he too was a tax advocate.
Who's gonna pay for Elon's missiles?
Yes,
Taxes.
because that's mostly for local government and for your community.
Who's gonna pay for all our wars we lost? Our taxes, my taxes. Israel killing kids.
All right.
That's all here.
Okay, do you want to say anything, Bill? Why don't you go up? Go ahead. Mike, I'm sorry, yeah. I know it's Mike.
It's just fun having a different name.
Okay, Mike, go ahead.
All right. Well, let's talk about the filthy 500. And everybody knows who they are. The senators and representatives, right? You know, we had a representative here last week.
Yes, I know we did.
And did you put it online yet?
It's online.
What's that?
Zoom or in person?
She was in person last week,
Yeah.
and it's already online. She was a former senator, yes. Representative, I'm sorry, yes.
In Illinois, right?
Yes, yeah.
And unfortunately, I lost my damn backpack. And I had to trace with Mr. Switch. Drive me around looking for my.
Did you find it?
No, somebody stole it on the bus, I think. Damn. Anyway, Karina, why'd you didn't come last week?
I'm sorry?
We had a representative. This is about the highest class person we've ever had here.
I was around New York City.
You were in New York.
New York City. The rope. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Trump and fake news. Don't trust anything in New York. Anyway. No, I'll go with Chicago cheesecake.
Good New York bagel from New York is pretty good.
You just get him in Skokie.
Okay. Anyway, you guys are going to force me into pointing out the filthy 500 and who gets. Right?
Right.
So I'm going to have to do homework. If anybody has suggestions on Zoom, I'm going to do some research and I might do a presentation if Charlie doesn't cause me any problems.
Like on, that's what Johnson heard that.
I may do a good research report on, what's the name of that website?
For
The filthy 500 that get kickbacks.
I don't know what you're talking. Which one you're talking about?
Karina, help me out. What's the name of that website that tracks the filthy 500, the kickbacks?
I know that there's a website that is for investors that shows you what Nancy Pelosi and her husband are buying and selling.
No, this is the one that goes.
He's made incredible money in
This is politicians that get kickbacks from governments, from businesses. It's called. Come on, Tim.
I'm drawing blank.
Anyway, I'm going to do some research.
Can I ask a question?
Corrupt. Go ahead, Charlie. What's the name of it?
The last time you spoke, you said you were going to talk about high-speed trains in Germany. You didn't show one slide,
Turn them
one
up. I can't
picture
hear.
of a
can't.
high-speed train.
It's as loud as it goes right now. All right. Anyway,
Can you repeat that?
Your talk last time was one of the worst we had. It was supposed to be on high-speed trains, and you didn't show
You're
one
welcome.
picture of a high-speed train all night.
All right, I'll do that. I'll do the next show.
That was the
We'll
worst
show you
program
pictures
we've
of
ever had.
high-speed trains.
I gotta expect some research.
Charlie wants to see trains.
all right, well, no, he's saying that, Billy's saying that that you were way off topic. You were gonna talk about high-speed trains. It was all about your trip to France.
He never showed high-speed trains.
Trains there.
You are off topic is what he's saying.
Right
Yeah.
now?
No, he said your last presentation, you were off topic.
I don't even remember my last presentation, Charlie. How do you
High-speed
remember
trains.
that?
All right, let's, all right, I think it's about time we, Justin, are you ready to give your final remarks?
Yeah.
We'll get out of here a little early tonight then.
Wait a minute, that website. I feel like I just threw it. once.
Just ask ChatGPT, it'll find it for you. Okay,
Just read the book. It's worth reading. Don't go off what others tell you the book says. Always go see the movie, read the book, see for yourself, because I think some people won't give this a shot, mainly because they trust the opinions of Glenn Beck and David Horowitz. But they would be missing themselves, they'd be missing out on a very provocative read. And that is all I gotta say. Thank you.
just adjourn us then, Justin.
We are adjourned.